It's Dr. T, and in this episode, we're answering the question, why all this talk about childhood trauma? Well, there has been more work on this topic lately, but to go back to the beginning, we need to go back to the 80s when we first started really talking about this issue. And we have to credit Oprah because she did a lot to raise awareness about child abuse, childhood trauma, particularly childhood sexual abuse. And the issue has kind of been gaining steam with more research in recent decades. And one of the key pieces of research that gives us information about these adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs as they're called for short, is work that was done with Doctors Anda and Felitti in conjunction with the Centers for Disease Control beginning in the 1990s. And so the ACEs study looked at the experiences of trauma that people had in their background, in their childhood, and tried to see what kind of impact this experience of trauma had on their mental and physical health over the course of their lifetime. And they did this by asking people very simple yes or no questions. They gave them a questionnaire and said, before the age of 18, did you experience any of these things, yes or no? And for each yes question that you answered, you would get a point. And then you would add your points up, your yeses up, and get a score. So it was simply experiencing this particular kind of trauma. It was not how long it went on, how severe it was on, just did it occur in your home. And so the things that they asked about were physical abuse, emotional abuse or psychological abuse, sexual abuse, emotional or physical neglect, domestic violence in the home, a partner being battered by the other, single parent home, so loss of a parent due to separation, divorce, or death, incarceration of a parent, substance abuse in one or both parents, parents suffering from a mental illness, or parents suffering from a chronic long-term illness. And so the study looked at these experiences, these ACEs, and connected them with people's health outcomes. And what they found was that even one ACE, right, an ACE score of 1, would increase your risk of a whole range of mental and physical health problems later in life. And if there was one, there was at least an 87% chance that there would be at least one more in your background. Now, they tried to connect these scores with various diseases. I'll give you just a partial list. They looked at things like heart disease, chronic lung disease, liver disease, diabetes, suicide attempts, injuries of some form, risky behavior, including sexually transmitted illnesses, obesity, smoking, substance abuse, many others, but those are some of the main ones that impact millions of people in our country. So why is it that there is this impact on our physical health? The mental health we sort of can understand, but why the physical health? Well, living with ACEs puts you in fight, flight, fawn, or freeze mode. So you're probably familiar with fight or flight. The others maybe not so much. So we've added a couple in recent decades. So fight, of course, is standing your ground. You're going to take on the tiger or whatever the threat is. Flight is you're going to run, try to get out of the situation. Fawn is when you try to please or placate or talk down or calm down the person as a way to keep yourself safe. And then freeze mode is literally what it sounds like. You just sort of shut down. You don't really try to do anything. You're just in shock, traumatized. The reason this matters is because when you're in fight or flight, your cortisol levels in your body are elevated. And when you're in this stage for extended periods of time, because you're not meant to be, right? Usually the threat is there, you deal with it, and then you move on with your life, and then everything returns to normal. If you're living in a home where trauma occurs, you are in this state of fight or flight more often than not, sometimes constantly. And so that dysregulates your system. The cortisol running through your system repeatedly, continuously, creates wear and tear on the tissues in your body. So we just said one ACE will increase your risk for anything on the list. 4 ACEs appears to be a kind of threshold. Like once you get to 4 ACEs, your risk for these physical and mental health outcomes jumps dramatically. And of course, it's a terrible toll it takes on people individually, but it's also highly costly. The estimate is that we're in the tens of billions of dollars in terms of the cost every year for people needing care due to the experience of these ACEs and what it does to them over the long term. What I found really fascinating about this is that some of these problems that we think of as health problems in our society and in our healthcare system are really solutions to these problems of ACEs. So the link between ACEs and negative health outcomes was actually accidental. It was originally discovered in a study on obesity, where people had lost a tremendous amount of weight, over 100 pounds for most of these folks. And then they were being studied while they lost the weight. They were being studied to see if they could keep it off. And there was a substantial portion of people in the study who put the weight on very, very quickly. And the researchers were very puzzled about it. And in taking a closer look, what they found was that the people in the group that was putting the weight back on had a history of childhood trauma, and in particular, sexual abuse. And so that gave them their first clue to look at this link. Now, the university that I used to work for, we were very lucky. We had at different times both Dr. Anda and Dr. Felitti, these key foundational researchers, come and speak on our campus. And I was sitting in the audience one time when Dr. Felitti was speaking to healthcare providers, and he said, "We are doing our patients a tremendous disservice." He said, "We will get in our patients' faces and wag our fingers at them and say, you need to quit smoking. You need to lose weight. You need to stop drinking so much because they are having a negative impact on your health." He said, when really what overeating and smoking and using of substances is it's these people's way of trying to solve the original problem of the trauma that they experienced and their inability to deal with it. They didn't get help, or they were left alone in it as children. And so these things that we label as problems in healthcare are really their solutions. And we need to be addressing the root of the problem. They said we should be asking everyone who comes in the door these questions, and we should be giving them the opportunity to talk about what happened to them, point them towards mental health counseling, if that would be appropriate, and really get at the root of the problem to solve their health concerns. So that would help people in the moment once it's already happened. But how can we get at the root of this? How can we get to it before they get to that point? Well, in many cases, this trauma is intergenerational, meaning that people do to their children what was done to them. And so this poor parenting, neglectful parenting, abusive parenting, these dynamics just keep perpetuating themselves. When we look at parental abuse in particular, we know that being poor or not having adequate financial resources and not having adequate emotional support is a real problem. That is linked to these adverse childhood experiences. So one of the things that we could do is a better job in terms of educating people about what it means to be a parent and how to be a good parent. One of the other things we know from the research is that one of the reasons parents tend to be abusive is that they have unrealistic expectations of what children can do and should be doing at particular developmental levels. So if we built into our curriculum, let's say in high school, information about healthy relationships in general, child development, what are healthy ways to parent, all of these things, and also screen for adverse childhood experiences so we can get younger people the help that they need, those two things would go a very long way towards solving this problem. This is such a big problem. It's one that's very important to me, not just from my professional experience and expertise, but personally, because I grew up in a home with 5 ACEs, and we were borderline for one more. And as I came to be an adult and became a parent, and it was so important to me to be a good mom to my daughter, I started talking to my sister, who had her first child about 1.5 years after I did. And we started talking about our childhood and talking about wanting to be parents, good parents, talking about what happened to us, what we experienced that we didn't want to repeat in particular. And we came to realize, like, we didn't know until our late 20s, early 30s, that we had grown up in an abusive home. We thought everything was fine. We were a happy, close, loving family. And so over time, we realized that there was a lot going on that we needed to heal from. And so we did that together, supporting each other, validating each other's memories, pulling each other through. And we have, in recent years, created a lot of content to help people who are trying to heal from childhood trauma. So we have a podcast. We have a book that we wrote about our experiences. We have a website we've created with free content, and I've put that website in the show notes. It's www.ronnieandjenny.com. And so if anyone is interested in learning more about adverse childhood experiences, maybe listening to this makes you think maybe I grew up in a home like that, or you already know, please check out those resources. They're free. We put them out there in the world because this truly, truly matters to us. And we really want to help people find the kind of healing and peace of mind that we have. And if you find yourself in that circumstance, just know that we are sending you lots of love and hoping that you're able to find healing too.